Hi Mr. Jarvis, I'm Patricia Martin. I know that I'm really late on this. I must have just missed the tab that I had to do discussion. I figured it was one of the typing ones like earlier, but it turns out I had to call you. So I figured that maybe if I did a video, I could show you that I at least know my information, and we'll give it a go. So on my computer I have the list of topics that were on the assignment, and I'll just kind of go through and discuss those. The first topic or point of discussion is the social, political, and economic issues and consequences of the Second Industrial Revolution. As we know, the Industrial Revolution affected all different areas of the United States, and so it affected the North, the South, the Midwest, and the West, and obviously in all different ways. One major political issue that occurred, though, in the majority of the states or areas was that immigration, and it kind of caused some bumps, whether people accepted immigration, whether they declined it, but it also caused some friction socially, and that was more of like they didn't agree on different things, discrimination, and so the immigrants, whether or not they were Chinese, German, Irish, European, any of those, they usually did not get along with the white settlers very well, and so it definitely caused some problems with jobs and treatment with each other. Some economic causes. In each area there were different ways that each area made money, and in like the North and the Midwest there was more of industrial types of jobs, but where in the West, when they didn't have as much population, they had to use more of the natural resources. And that also definitely that was definitely a big factor. Population definitely affected that, where the big cities had lots of people, so they had more people to help out and run the factories. The second point is the similarities and differences between the first and second industrial revolutions. So, the first revolution was definitely not as industrial based. It was, but it wasn't at the same time. It was more of improving agriculture, and it was more of like hands-on crafts, where well, not really crafts, but like more hands-on stuff. Where the second industrial revolution was more factories and making steel and iron and coins, and the second revolution had much more complex technology. So the growth was definitely evident, and also in the first one, there wasn't as much transportation. Development, where in the second one we lots more railroads. The Transcontinental Railroad was one of the biggest transportation upgrades, I guess, and it connected from coast to coast, so goods could be distributed everywhere, which I think definitely affected the economic status of the United States at the time. Another point is changes that occurred as the United States shifted from more of an agricultural-based economy to more of an industrial society. And I think that one of the biggest things was just the populations in the cities they expedited. I think that's how you say that. Anyways, but the population in the city grew a ton, and I think that just had to do with there was more of a demand for them, and more immigrants came over. But with more population in the cities and more the demand for those jobs, eventually they're going to fill up. So there's also an increase in competition for jobs. And obviously from agriculture to industrial, there was less farming going on. That's why the West did not have as big of a population, due to the fact that there wasn't a demand for it. There wasn't as big of a demand for it. Another point was the impact of the political machines in the United States. So, the political machines were pretty much what convinced people to do different things. So, very powerful leaders would not really bend down, but they would go out and they'd help bigger bigger groups that were lower than them on the social ladder, and they would help them, and they would convince them to do whatever they wanted them to do. So if it was a person that was running for president, they would reach down to a lower social group and do lots of things for them to gain their trust, and then they would ask for something in return, such as their vote. So that definitely was a big factor in many presidential elections, not just presidential, but like mayor, just townspeople in general. And they would definitely, pick on, not pick on more or less, but they would just, they would choose the people that were lower and less educated, just because they didn't know anything else. And then let's see, the immigrant experience in the United States. So there was tons and tons of immigrants that came over to the United States, and nowadays we have a limit on how many we can actually take in, because there's so many coming in at one time. Many of them came in through Ellis Island, which is pretty much the known immigration kind of station, but many Europeans, the Irish, Germans, many of those people came over either due to, like, in Ireland, the famine, the potato famine. My grandma actually immigrated from there, and but I know that also, like, in Germany, just like bad leadership, just kind of like the United States was known for their opportunity, and so I know that's another reason why they came over. But some other people that also came over were the Chinese, but they came to the west side, and so they helped out more of the western people with, like, the railroad. Also Japanese people came over, but they had issues with their leaders actually letting them come over, so there was definitely some conflict there between them. But when they did get here, it was probably not the best. It was not the best experience at all. There were many things called sweet shops, which were like very low paid jobs in very bad conditions, and then what also occurred with that was more child labor, and it just was not a very good situation for them. Their housing was very poor. They were not treated well. Discrimination was prominent everywhere. But many places there was probably more when, like, the Irish, for instance, when the Irish came over, there was a bunch in New York City, and so other Irish people would go to New York City just to be with their own people, to keep traditions alive. So that was one positive, is that they could all kind of be together and still do the same things they used to do at home. So another one would be the significant inventors of the Industrial Revolution, and there were many, and just some different inventions would just be like, there was stoplights. Thomas Edison invented the electricity. That actually doesn't really apply, but anyways. But there's the third railroad cars, sleeping railroad cars, beauty products, assembly lines. That was Henry Ford, and that helped build better cars. Some other ones listed here. There's like there are a bunch of steam engines, improvement in light bulbs, and like different power sources, and there's many people of both races actually that helped make a lot of these inventions that we still have today, like the beauty products we still have today, the stoplight, cars, assembly lines, and all that. So we still all have that today, so I think it's actually really cool that it kind of all still applies to all of us. Let me see. And there were also, and one of the final ones is that the labor movements, and that has to do with the union and the strikes. It was a little confusing, but what I got out is more of that, due to these labor movements, that people were finally standing up for these awful hours and these awful wages that they were getting, and I believe the first one was the Knights one, and it was more of a radical one, and they did more adventurous kind of stuff, and it didn't really work out for them very well. And so the next group, they kind of stepped back from that, and they took more of a calm approach, and eventually it kind of all got fixed. Everybody kind of moved on from that though too, and many other people, social movement groups definitely started picking up on this, and they picked up not only on the really bad wages, but on the child labor and the bad settlement, and the bad housing for immigrants, and even people in the lower social classes. And that pretty much has to do with, that's pretty much all that, and that's all of the bullet points, I believe. Thank you for kind of accepting this, and thank you, and if you need to call me or anything and talk about anything else, I'd be happy to anytime, pretty much tomorrow. You can get me at 406-465-1980. Thank you. Stop it.